The Party Up event has just kicked off within Pokémon GO, and we're going to be having this event for the next few days. Now, there's quite a lot of Pokémon that you will want to pay attention to that are going to be exclusive to this event. That's what this video is going to be all about. Let's get right into it. Alright, how's it going everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon GO video. Today we're going to be going over every single Pokemon that you could potentially get that are going to be exclusive to the Party Up event. Overall, I would say that the Party Up event is going to be not that exciting. I mean, there's not necessarily going to be any game-breaking Pokemon, and overall, the event bonuses are kind of lackluster. I've already talked about this event in detail in a previous video, but today I wanted to highlight each and every single Pokemon to see if there's anything that is actually worth catching. But of course, even if there is not a single Pokemon here that is something you would be interested in, I would still suggest trying to catch every single Pokemon as possible, because at the very least, they're going to give you Stardust and candy. But yeah, with that said, let's go over every single Pokemon that you could potentially get during this event and try to determine which ones are worth your time and effort. Alright, first, let's talk about this special timed research. The Pokemon that you could potentially get during this timed research is going to be Hisuian Growlithe and a Wurmple wearing a party hat. Honestly, neither of these Pokemon are all that exciting. Neither of these Pokemon have any kind of gameplay relevance, and the only really good factor about them is that both of them are rare shinies. But aside from that, you don't necessarily have to care about either of these Pokemon. But next, let's move on to the wild encounters. What's interesting is that a bunch of these Pokemon are actually new shinies that was released recently. More specifically with Gothita and Morlul, both of those Pokemon are making their returns for this event. So if you missed out on their shinies from the Fashion Week event or the Festival of Lights event, well, you get a second opportunity at getting them. We're also going to be having Solosis in the wild, and that is a Pokemon that also has a rare shiny. None of these Pokemon have any kind of gameplay significance, but at least they have a highly desirable shiny. Now, we're also going to be getting the Paldean starter Pokemon during this event, which includes Sprigatito, Fuecoco, and Quaxly. Now, interestingly, these three Pokemon have actually been very common spawns even in between events. And of course, none of their evolved forms have reached their full potential yet, and that is of course because none of them have gotten a community day. But between the three of them, I would say that Fuecoco is the one that you will want to go after, mainly because its evolved form Skeledirge is actually somewhat useful within the Go Battle League. It's kind of like a side-graded version of Alolan Marowak, which, if you've ever used that Pokemon within the Go Battle League, it could actually be really useful. Now, alongside these three Paldean starters, we're also getting a bunch of other Paldean Pokemon that we received recently with different in-game events. These include Lechonk, Nimble, Pawmi, Smoliv, and Tadbulb. Again, all of these Pokemon are actually pretty common spawns in between events, so it's not like you're missing out on any of these Pokemon if you do not catch them during this event. But next, let's move on to raid battles, because there's actually a couple of Pokemon within here that I do think is going to be quite interesting. First and foremost, within 1-star raids, you could potentially have Hisuian Growlithe, Nosepass, Dwebble, Clink, and Lechonk hatching from those 1-star raids. Now, none of these Pokemon hold any kind of significance, but every single one of them can potentially be shiny, so it's really going to be all about the shiny hunt if you're doing any 1-star raids. I don't necessarily think that's worth your raid passes, because it's not like any of these Pokemon are going to have a boosted shiny rate. But next, let's move on to 3-star raids, because I actually think a bunch of these Pokemon are somewhat relevant. First and foremost, there's going to be Rhydon in raids, and its evolved form Rhyperior is actually meta-relevant with PvP and raid battles, so that is a Pokemon that actually will be worth going after. We're also going to be having Pelipper in raids, and the only place where Pelipper is really good is of course going to be the Great League, but that's going to require PvP IVs, which you will not get through raid battles. In other words, I would skip out on ever doing any Pelipper raids, unless you need the Candy and Candy XL for a different Pelipper in your collection that actually does have PvP IVs. We're also going to be seeing Gardevoir in raids, and that is of course one of the best fairy type attackers in the game. So if you do not have yourself a good Gardevoir, this could be a great opportunity for you to pick up a good one. Something else you should keep in mind is that Gardevoir from raids can potentially be shiny, so if you want yourself a shiny Gardevoir with high IVs, then do a bunch of these raids whenever you see them. We're also going to be seeing Bombardier in raids, and it seems like this is one of those Pokemon that is going to be raid exclusive. If you still do not have yourself a Bombardier, then I would suggest doing at least 1 or 2 of these raids, at least to get the Pokedex entry. Now, in 5-star raids, we are of course going to be getting Terrakion. This is probably the most meta-relevant Pokemon out of all the Pokemon that you will see in raids. It is currently the #1 non-Mega and non-Shadow fighting type, and it's also a decent Rock type attacker as well. And then in Mega Evolution raids, we are of course going to be having Mega Kangaskhan. This Pokemon is not really that good, but it is a decent Pokedex entry if you're trying to fill out your Mega Pokedex. But something you do need to keep in mind when it comes to Mega Kangaskhan is that this is an Australian regional. So if you still do not have yourself a Kangaskhan, then make sure you do one so that you can get that Pokedex entry. And this is also a great way for you to pick up the shiny version of this regional Pokemon as well. Next, let's move on to field research task encounters. We're going to be seeing Hisuian Growlithe, Wurmple wearing a party hat, Nosepass, Gothita, Solosis, and the 3 Paldean starters. Now, I've already talked about these Pokemon at length, but at least for Hisuian Growlithe, Wurmple wearing a party hat, Nosepass, Gothita, and Solosis, they are Pokemon that could potentially be shiny. So if you want a high IV version of any of these shinies, then try getting them in field research tasks. And yeah, that concludes all the Pokemon that you could potentially get during this event aside from regular spawns. I have to say, this is not necessarily that exciting. Aside from a couple of 3-star raid bosses, as well as Terrakion, there's really nothing here that stands out, and that's quite unfortunate. So yeah, overall, nothing necessarily too exciting with this event. There are a few Pokemon that could potentially be good for the Go Battle League, but overall this is going to be a big shiny hunt with a lot of Pokemon that were introduced most recently. Personally speaking, I think the whole purpose of this event had a lot less to do with the event spawns and more to do with the party play feature. It's really unfortunate because there's nothing really too exciting about this event aside from a feature that not a lot of players actually care about. But yeah, maybe there are a couple of diamonds in the rough within this event, but I really do think this is one that you could potentially skip. But yeah, in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Now, I would love to know your thoughts regarding all of these event Pokemon down below. Is there a particular Pokemon that you're interested in getting, or is there a particular shiny that you actually want out of this event? Or are you someone who just feels like this event is completely lackluster and it's an event that you can completely skip? I would love to know why down below, and let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying it and found it to be informative, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And also don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then make sure you go and check out the links in the description below. For every single member of my Patreon family, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list. So if you want to interact with me within Pokemon Go, like with remote raids or the friendship system, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. Also, if you want to support my channel without spending money, you could do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula, and I'm on the following platforms. Alright, and that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.